The cup of cocoa was still warm when Emma Walker vanished in the quiet residential area of Pershore Road, Birmingham, a city with a population of over 1 million. That late November evening in 2012 arrived with cold rain and a thick fog blanketing the streets around Edgbaston Reservoir. At 9:41 pip. Nothing, Emma's neighbor Helen Morris glanced out her kitchen window and saw the 15-year-old girl in her King Edward VI school uniform standing at the back door, holding her phone and softly saying something. Emma smiled, raised her hand as if to signal, "It's okay," then turned back inside, leaving her green jacket hanging on the chair. The older woman watched the girl's silhouette disappear behind the doorframe, the sound of rain drowning out the final light footsteps. What happened in the next 42 minutes would ensure Birmingham never forgot. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. Birmingham, late November 2012. Darkness fell early, the winter chill seeping through the damp streets around the Edgbaston area. Sodium lights cast a glow on the foggy roads, reflecting off puddles left by the afternoon rain. From afar, the sounds of traffic mixed faintly with distant train horns. After cheerleading practice at King Edward VI School, 15-year-old Emma Walker rode her bike home. The usually cheerful girl who laughed and talked non-stop seemed quieter than usual that evening. When she got inside, she greeted her parents and hurried upstairs, saying she just wanted to rest early because she was tired. Sarah Walker later recalled her daughter's glance as she passed through the hallway, and searching look as if she had heard something outside in the yard. During dinner, Emma ate little, occasionally looking up toward the window where bushes swayed in the wind. When asked, she just said nothing. After the meal, Sarah washed dishes, Martin checked the heater, and the house gradually grew quiet. Around 10 o'clock, Sarah planned to go upstairs to say goodnight to her daughter. But the room was empty, the lights still on, books left open on the desk. The window was slightly ajar, curtains fluttering lightly in the breeze. On the chair, Emma's green jacket remained, next to her phone and wallet, the screen dark. Sarah went downstairs, called her husband, and the two searched the entire ground floor, the backyard, the shed, along the fence, shining a flashlight into the alley behind the house. No trace, no sound. The back door was wide open, small mud prints on the floor, possibly from someone who had just gone out. They tried calling Emma's friends, checking her social media accounts, but got no response. As time passed, the house sank into silence, broken only by the wind whistling through the door frame. When all possibilities for searching on their own were exhausted, fear rose, and both realized something abnormal had happened. Martin picked up the phone, his hand trembling slightly, and finally dialed the police to report that their daughter had disappeared. The dispatcher confirmed the details and forwarded the case to the local Edgbaston patrol unit. While waiting for a response, Martin and Sarah paced between the front door and the hallway, the yellow light filtering through the curtains, casting faint streaks on the walls. When the police car pulled up in front of the house, it was nearly midnight. Two patrol officers, Hughes and Allen, stepped out, carrying notebooks and a scene camera. Sarah opened the door, her face panicked. Martin standing behind her, still holding his phone out of habit. Hughes greeted briefly, reviewed the timelines, then began checking each room. Emma's room on the second floor was lit, the bed neat, books left open on the desk. A small photo frame lay face down, as if knocked over in haste. The window was ajar, curtains fluttering lightly in the wind. Hughes noted it in his book, took a few photos, then went downstairs. Allen walked around the kitchen and back hallway, pausing at the door to the garden. The hinges were undamaged, the lock intact, but the tile floor had fresh mud marks, small streaks extending to the porch. Both agreed there were no signs of forced entry or anything knocked over. In the garden, the grass was still wet with dew, the fence intact, the alley leading to the back street unlit. Allen shone his flashlight, noted the coordinates of the door and escape route to the alley, marking the area for temporary closure. Back inside, Hughes asked the parents for the most recent photo of Emma, her height, build, and usual clothing. Sarah fetched a photo taken in the schoolyard. Martin noted down the phone numbers of her close friends. All information was entered into the initial report for sending to Central Command. Hughes radioed in, requesting the case be updated in the National Police System as high-risk missing person, juvenile female. When asked about the possibility of Emma leaving voluntarily, both parents denied it. She had never gone anywhere without telling them first. While waiting for the forensics team, Hughes instructed no one to leave the scene and marked areas for sampling. Helen took evidence bags, carefully placing Emma's phone and wallet inside, noting the exact time of collection. They reviewed the call log. The last call was early in the evening, no messages near the time of disappearance. Hughes noted that the phone still had battery, but was inactive, possibly turned off manually. The two officers conferred briefly, then requested additional support from the unit monitoring the Edgbaston Reservoir area within a 3-mile radius, in case the victim had left via the trail behind the house. Another patrol car was dispatched with floodlights and barrier tape, setting it up around the garden exit. Radio chatter crackled intermittently as they reported progress to the system. The air in the house was thick with dampness and the rustle of paperwork mixed with the scratch of pens. Sarah leaned against the banister, her eyes fixed on the stairs leading to her daughter's room. Martin sat in a chair, hands clasped, staring silently at the lines on the report form. When the inspection ended, Hughes signed off, arranging for the family to stay while the criminal investigation team took over the next morning. They advised not touching anything in the room and leaving the door as is. The police lights outside still rotated slowly, blue flashes reflecting on the walls. When the patrol car left, the house sank back into silence, leaving just the couple sitting in the living room, gazing through the foggy window at the garden, now cordoned off with warning tape. That night, the patrol team's initial report was sent to the regional command center. Immediately after reviewing the data, the commander approved an order for expanded search operations. At dawn the next day, the CID unit officially took over the case and established a field coordination team, using Edgbaston Police Station as the command center, beginning to circle a 2-mile search radius from the Walker home on Pershore Road. While it was still dark, the first police cars blocked both ends of the street, setting up checkpoints to log anyone who had passed through that night. At the scene, the forensics team completed sampling shoe prints and mud in the garden, then handed the house back to the family. Within hours, the residential areas around Pershore Road, Yew Tree Road, and the trails leading to Edgbaston Reservoir were prioritized in the search plan. The task force brought tracking dogs to follow the scent from the Walker's back door to the alley. The trail extended nearly a mile, ending at a turn into the low woods surrounding the reservoir. Simultaneously, police sent alerts to neighborhood watches and called for volunteers to assist in the search. By afternoon, over 40 people had arrived, divided into groups, provided with area maps and flashlights to comb every strip of land, grass ditch and wasteland. Temperatures dropped quickly, fog beginning to cover the water's surface. Lines of people walked parallel, maintaining even spacing, searching the bushes along the trails. One tracking dog suddenly stopped at a bend near the water's edge, barking loudly, then pawing at the muddy bank. Police approached, shining lights, and discovered a metallic glint. A silver women's bicycle, front wheel caked in mud, tilted to one side, handlebars marked with skid traces. No blood, no personal items nearby. They recorded the GPS location, took photos, then extended barrier tape 30 meters around the area. The scene was handed to forensics for processing, soil samples, and tire tracks collected for analysis. The entire area around Edgbaston Reservoir, including the northern trails and grass near the water, was designated the primary search center. A temporary tent was erected at the entrance as a command post, where topographic maps covered the tables, red pins marking searched zones. Coordinating units communicated constantly via radio, updating each check strip. The dive team was mobilized from Birmingham City Police late in the afternoon, using sonar to scan the water, but finding no unusual objects. Water temperature was too low, visibility nearly zero, so diving was postponed to the next morning. When darkness fell completely, portable floodlights turned on around the reservoir, casting golden reflections on the fog. Police asked volunteers to withdraw to avoid disturbing evidence. Hughes and Allen, the first officers on the case, were reassigned to assist with note-taking and coordinating civilian statements. All activity proceeded in silence, broken only by distant dog barks and faint radio static. By midnight, searching paused temporarily. Forensics sealed the bicycle, labeling it evidence E4712, noting discovery time and recoverer's name. No blood, no signs of struggle, just faint skid marks toward the shore. Seed concluded the scene was secure, showing no direct attack, but decided to maintain the cordon for continued expanded search the next morning. As dawn broke, all data, images, and preliminary reports from the first night's search team were sent to the central system. The bicycle and related samples were transferred to CID forensics storage. Simultaneously, the case was officially entered into the PNC database, marking the shift from a missing person report to a criminal investigation. Detective Sergeant Mark Pennington, from Birmingham CID, was appointed case lead and gave the file the temporary name Operation Reservoir. He arrived at the scene at noon, bringing a coordination team of 2 detectives and a data technician. First, Pennington ordered reconstruction of the scene map, connecting key points: the Walker home on Pershore Road, the backyard alley, the park trail, and the bicycle discovery site by the reservoir. On the spread-out map, he used a red pen to draw possible movement routes within the time frame from evening to dawn. Each coordinate was numbered, linked to scene photos. Officers involved in the night search were called to the station to detail observations and unchecked areas. Pennington spent most of the afternoon with the tech team reviewing all scene photos and videos, confirming tire positions, trace directions, and distances between objects. Based on this, he concluded Emma's possible route did not exceed 2 miles from home, with the likely endpoint the Edgbaston Reservoir area. In parallel, the data team began collecting and reviewing CCTV systems in the residential area, especially along Pershore, U-Tree, and trails to Reservoir Road. Most private cameras were off or fog-obscured, but at the convenience store at the street's end, blurry footage showed bicycle lights passing in the evening. Pennington ordered digitization and enhancement to confirm identifying features. At the gas station near the Bristol Road intersection, cameras captured a silver hatchback, leaving the area around the same time, license plate unreadable. This data was added to the comparison report, flagged for verification. Meanwhile, the administrative team contacted the school, colleagues, and Emma's friends to compile a list of close contacts in the 48 hours before disappearance. Cheerleading practices, classes, and after-school activities were reviewed, each student and teacher name noted with phone numbers and departure times. Pennington divided teams by focus: forensics, continuing evidence checks, social unit gathering witness statements, tech analyzing phone signals, accessing cell tower records in the Edgbaston area. All information converged in the temporary office in the scene tent, where large Birmingham maps covered the walls, red lines and colored pins tracking investigation progress. By day's end, he printed the first consolidated report: the disappearance classified high risk. Primary suspicion: the route between the Walker home and reservoir area. Physical evidence included the bicycle, backpack, mud traces, and unidentified shoe prints. Pennington's final note: likelihood of victim leaving voluntarily is low. Need to verify closest personal connections. A quick meeting was held at Edgbaston Station to assign next-day tasks: expand camera range, contact vehicle division to trace matching cars near the reservoir at estimated times, and request detailed forensics report on shoe prints. Leaving the command tent, Pennington stood gazing at the foggy reservoir, where barrier tape still fluttered lightly in the wind. He closed his notebook, noted the date and signature, then submitted copies to central storage, officially launching Operation Reservoir. The next morning, the investigation team began collecting statements from the school, friends, and those closely connected to Emma in the final days before her disappearance. In the initial compiled list, one name stood out marked in red: Riley Gall, a 17-year-old student, Emma's ex-boyfriend, who had dated her for over a year and broken up just weeks before the disappearance. When police contacted him, Riley was cooperative, agreeing to come to Edgbaston Station for a statement. The interview took place in a small second-floor meeting room, with only Pennington and a note-taking officer present. Riley appeared calm, neatly dressed, voice low and slightly tense. He stated that, on the night Emma disappeared, he was at his grandfather's house in Moseley, watching TV and going to bed early. When asked if he had contacted Emma that day, Riley replied briefly, "No, we had broken up." Pennington took notes, probing further about their relationship. Riley said they occasionally texted, but had limited meetings recently because Emma's family didn't want her seeing him. As he left the room, he forced a smile, saying he'd be willing to help with anything. After he left, Pennington ordered verification of the reported route. Riley's grandfather's address in Moseley was nearly 4 miles from the Walker home. According to him, Riley was home from 8 p.m. onward. The tech team checked traffic cameras on the route between Pershore Road and Moseley High Street. City surveillance data showed a silver hatchback, matching the type registered to Riley, on Bristol Road at 10:20 p.m. The image was blurry, but paint color and taillight shape matched. No record showed the car returning to Moseley later. Pennington requested plate verification from the vehicle division. Result: unreadable due to light reflection. However, this was enough to cast doubt on the statement. That same afternoon, one of Emma's close friends, Kira Williams, came to the station with information. She said that on the night Emma disappeared, her phone received a text from an unknown number. "If you want to know what happened, don't call anyone." Kira thought it was a prank, but after learning of the disappearance, she turned the message over to police. The sending number was unregistered, but tech checks revealed it matched an anonymous account Riley had used on a chat forum. Carrier data showed the number active near Moseley around 10 p.m. When invited back for supplemental statement, Riley denied it, saying he didn't know whose number it was. He insisted he only used one personal phone and had sent nothing related. Pennington didn't argue, just noted possible indirect involvement. He ordered seizure of Riley's phone for technical analysis. Preliminary results showed no outgoing messages at the disappearance time, but experts noted recent deletion of message logs. This made Pennington more cautious. He compared Riley's movement data to the hatchback sighting on Bristol Road. Distance and timing completely mismatched the home all evening claim. When questioned again, Riley explained he might have misremembered the time, that he had gone out briefly to buy snacks for his grandfather and returned immediately. When asked for receipts or witnesses, he couldn't provide any. The interview lasted over an hour, during which Riley repeatedly changed small details, from departure time to reasons for using social media that night. His posture leaned forward slightly, hands tapping lightly on the table, eyes avoiding Pennington's when asked about Emma. No direct evidence, but inconsistencies were enough to move his file to person of interest. Before leaving the room, Riley was informed police might contact him again if needed. In the hallway, he avoided the note-taking officer's gaze, hurrying out the door. Pennington watched through the glass, then returned to the desk, flipped his notebook, and wrote the final line. Subject with motive opportunity requires further monitoring. In that day's report, Riley Gall's name appeared for the first time in Operation Reservoir, with a brief note: statement unverified, inconsistent movement timeline, high defensive behavior. The report was sent to the internal system, and Riley's file was officially separated as a subsidiary branch for tracking. As Pennington closed the case folder, outside the Birmingham sky turned ashen gray, and the barrier tapes around Edgbaston Reservoir remained taut and still in the cold wind. After the report on the interrogation of Riley Gall was sent off, Pennington turned his focus back to the scene around Edgbaston Reservoir, where the bicycle had been found. The West Midlands Police forensics team was deployed to conduct a more detailed evidence collection. That morning, The area around the trail was cordoned off with tape extended an additional 50 meters, divided into grid sections for searching. Specialists in white protective suits moved slowly under the dim light, using tweezers and sealable bags to collect samples of mud, fabric fibers, and shallow shoe prints on the damp ground. One of the technicians discovered a small gray piece of fabric caught on a low branch near the water's edge, apparently torn. This sample was labeled E1912 and placed separately in a plastic tube. The shoe prints near the bicycle were measured, revealing a size approximately 10, a common type for men's athletic shoes. Pennington observed, requesting photographs, GPS coordinate marking, and plaster casts for later comparison. Mud around the wheel area was sampled in 3 portions, categorized by moisture and color, due to the possibility of containing epidermal cells or organic material from contact. Another forensics officer scanned along the trail with ultraviolet light, but detected no blood or bodily fluids. Meanwhile, the support team set up a temporary sonar station in the deepest part of the reservoir, about 20 meters from where the bicycle was discovered. The sonar device was lowered into the water, emitting continuous scanning signals within a 40-meter radius, producing images of the reservoir bed. The results displayed on the central monitor showed only sediment and small solid objects, mostly rocks, branches, and trash. No structures resembled a human body. Pennington requested expanding the scan northward, but the results were similar. A diving team checked 2 sonar-marked suspicious points, finding only an old bicycle frame and a torn plastic bag. The entire operation lasted nearly 6 hours, but yielded no additional significant traces. As the forensics team packed up their equipment, one specialist reported collecting about 12 different samples: soil, fabric, suspected hair mixed in mud, and unidentified skid marks. All were sealed, individually coded, and transported to the laboratory at the West Midlands Forensic Science Center. Pennington signed off on the evidence inventory, noting that the area needed to remain secured for at least 72 hours before reopening to the public. That afternoon, he returned to the station, reviewing scene photos and preliminary sample results with the data technician. The lab reported that fingerprints on the bicycle matched Emma's and 2 unidentified individuals, possibly old prints. The shoe prints and mud were still being processed. 3 days later, the interim forensics report was returned. Results indicated insufficient biological material for complete DNA profiling. The gray fabric sample showed synthetic fibers, not matching clothing seized from Emma's room. The shoe prints were too faint for matching, and no human epidermal cells were found in the mud. The report concluded, no signs of violence, insufficient data to determine criminal activity. Pennington read each line carefully, underlining the conclusion, then added in his notebook. Collected evidence does not prove assault. Need cross-reference with phone data and movement route. He knew the case was slipping into the gray area between missing persons and crime, where every clue could be swept away by time and the cold mud of the reservoir. Finally, he signed to archive the file, sealing all samples pending further results from the Central London DNA lab. Outside, rain began to fall, heavy drops hitting the thick gray surface of the reservoir, washing away any remaining traces from the night Emma disappeared. After the preliminary forensics report was returned with insufficient grounds, Pennington directed the investigation team to shift focus to gathering witness statements around the reservoir area and connecting routes between Edgbaston and Moseley. Over the next 2 days, multiple small teams were dispatched, knocking on doors within a 3-mile radius of the bicycle discovery site, while posting witness appeals at shops, bus stops, and gas stations. Most residents said they saw nothing unusual on the night Emma went missing, but on the second afternoon, a woman living on Reservoir Road came to Edgbaston Station to provide information. She stated that on that night, around 10:30, while closing her curtains, she saw vehicle lights reflecting through the window, then glimpsed a silver hatchback leaving the reservoir area toward Bristol Road. She didn't catch the license plate, only recalling the car moving unusually slowly, and the driver being a young person wearing a dark hooded top. Pennington noted these details, requesting the technical team compare them with previously obtained traffic camera data. Simultaneously, another lead emerged when an employee at the gas station at the intersection of Bristol Road and Edgbaston Park contacted police. The employee recounted that late that same night, a young man driving a silver hatchback stopped to wash the car, appearing quite tense. His clothes were muddy, especially the pant legs and shoes. When asked if he wanted gas, the young man shook his head, paid in cash, and left hurriedly. The employee didn't know his name, but remembered him as tall, skinny, about 17 or 18 years old. After receiving the information, Pennington ordered a check of the station's CCTV system, obtaining blurry footage due to steam and poor lighting. Though the image was unclear, the car's paint color and style resembled a 2009 Ford Focus, matching the vehicle registered to Riley Gall. The vehicle cross-check report indicated that within a 5-mile radius of Edgbaston Reservoir, only 3 such cars were registered, 2 privately owned in Selly Oak and 1 to Riley. Pennington immediately requested the technical team extract frames and identify the plate, but glare obscured the characters. The analysis team was still processing enhanced brightness data, but identification likelihood was low. He noted in the file, silver hatchback, time 22:30, owner not yet identified. For cross-verification, he ordered comparison of the vehicle's appearance time in Bristol Road traffic cameras with the witness statement. The distance between the 2 locations matched, both within the 10:20 to 10:40 timeframe. The interim summary report indicated that a vehicle matching Riley's type left the reservoir area on the night Emma disappeared, later appearing at the gas station on the same route. However, there was no clear visual evidence or direct witness to identify the driver. Police continued canvassing homes along Reservoir Road, but no one else heard unusual noises or saw anyone on foot in the area. Still, the small details gradually formed a hazy picture. The silver car, male shoe prints and mud around the bicycle position. Pennington was cautious, avoiding hasty conclusions. He only noted in the end-of-day report that the coincidence of time, location, and vehicle type was notable but insufficient for legal basis. The summary was forwarded to the Operation Reservoir Command Office, where the large map still hung on the wall with numerous red pins marking each new location. That night, as the investigation team left the scene, fog covered the reservoir surface, obscuring the wet cordon tape, and the silver car from witness accounts remained just a fleeting shadow, undetermined who drove it on the night Emma Walker vanished. 3 days after recording witness statements about the silver car, the search team returned to Edgbaston Reservoir for additional scanning along the northern shore, where the terrain was marshy and hard to access initially. Drizzling rain made the ground slippery, mud reaching ankle deep. A group of volunteers with 2 police officers walking along low trees near the water's edge spotted a dark object half submerged in weeds. Approaching closer, they realized it was a school backpack, straps stuck in the mud, outer fabric covered in a thin layer of algae. The officer in charge immediately called the forensics team for proper recovery. The backpack was placed in a sealable bag, while the surrounding scene was cordoned off in a 10-meter radius for related items. Within the search area, no signs of struggle or other objects were found. Upon on-site inspection, inside the backpack were textbooks, a notebook, a small leather wallet, an iPod, 2 ballpoint pens, and a printed timetable bearing the name Emma Walker. Everything was intact, not very wet, indicating the backpack had only been there a few days. The forensics team documented fully, photographed, and labeled evidence E2312 before transport to the examination center. Pennington arrived at the scene minutes later, personally inspecting the discovery point. He noted that this location was about 700 meters north of the bicycle find, along a rarely used trail where dense bushes could easily conceal it. On the map he redrew, this route connected directly to a side path leading to the Moseley residential area, matching the direction the silver car was seen leaving that night. The backpack was taken to the evidence analysis room at the West Midlands Forensic Unit for a second sterile examination. Specialists sampled fingerprints on the zipper, outer surface, and inside the wallet. Preliminary results showed multiple overlapping prints, 4 matching Emma's records. Another clearer print on the zipper end matched fingerprints on file from Riley Gall's initial statement. The forensics lab sent a quick report: fingerprint match Riley Gall. Random match probability 1/150,000th. Upon receiving the results, Pennington requested verification of plausible reasons, as Riley had previously stated he hadn't touched Emma's belongings since the breakup. Though insufficient for criminal conclusion, the fingerprints' presence shifted the investigation direction. He ordered the backpack and contents sealed in storage, marking it valuable evidence. The detailed forensics report also noted no blood or suspicious biological material inside. Notebook pages were dry, school papers undamaged or soiled, indicating placement rather than throwing or dragging. Pennington closely examined scene photos. Shoe prints around the discovery were mixed old and new, hard to source, but the soil was depressed deeper than normal, as if someone had stood there momentarily. He marked this area as a temporary stop point on Emma's movement diagram. That afternoon, the backpack was moved to central evidence storage, labeled per Operation Reservoir procedure. In the case log, Pennington wrote, "Personal belongings discovered on northern reservoir shore. No violent signs, potential suspect fingerprint." The same day, technicians returned to the scene for additional ground-penetrating radar scans to check for buried or covered objects. But results were negative. The file noted, "Scene stable, single evidence item, no direct link to violence." However, finding the victim's personal belongings near the trail to Moseley prompted the entire team to expand the search map. By evening, as operations ended, the backpack discovery area remained cordoned. Police lights reflecting on rippling water, shining on yellow tape stretched across low trees, where a new evidence code had just been added to Operation Reservoir's list. 2 months after discovering the backpack, the investigation gradually slowed. Each week, Pennington received supplemental forensics reports, but contents showed little change. DNA samples from mud, fabric, and hair around the reservoir were too degraded for identification or full genetic sequencing. The expert report concluded, no reliable biological material to confirm origin or criminal activity. Shoe prints collected near the bicycle and backpack sites yielded no database matches. Footage from the gas station camera and convenience store on Bristol Road was processed multiple times, but still couldn't clearly read the plate. Investigation teams canvassed over 30 more witnesses in Edgbaston and Moseley, but gained no useful details. Cell tower data was cross-checked for Emma's phone signal on the disappearance night, last pinging in the Pershore Road area, with no data leaving it. The diving team was mobilized one final time, scanning the entire reservoir bed with high-depth sonar for anomalies, but finding only rusted metal scraps. Each search plan item was gradually checked off, leaving gaps between notes. In subsequent weeks, Operation Reservoir shifted to synthesis and comparison phase. Pennington held internal meetings, reporting to superiors that all information sources were exhausted. No new leads, no body, and no confirmed violence signs. In the meeting minutes, he noted briefly, "Case not yet meeting criminal threshold. Maintain classification, high risk missing, no crime evidence." Samples were resealed and stored at central evidence. The search map on the command tent wall was taken down, pins removed, rolled for archive. On the final day of sweeping, field police removed reservoir cordons, warning signs, and returned the area to local authorities. Afternoon light shone on the water, reflecting on damp wood planks once central to dozens of continuous search days. Pennington stood at the reservoir edge, rereading his own brief note, "No body, no new evidence, no further action until new data emerges." He signed the summary file, stamped suspended, then with the clerk transferred the entire Emma Walker missing persons file to West Midlands Police Archive under Unsolved Missing Persons. The nearly 200-page file including forensics reports, witness statements, search maps, and evidence catalog, was placed in a metal box labeled MPR 2012-1846. The archive room was in the basement of the old police headquarters, where hundreds of unsolved missing cases were shelved by year, silent under pale fluorescent lights. Emma Walker's name gradually gathered dust from newer files. Officers involved were reassigned. Mark Pennington moved to violent crime investigations, and the case was no longer mentioned in monthly meetings. The victim's family sent periodic inquiries, but police responses noted only still open, no new data. By mid-2014, an electronic copy was entered into the central database, becoming one of thousands marked inactive. No further action. In real life, life continued. Riley Gow, then 18, left Birmingham, moving to Solihull to live with relatives and train as an IT technician. His case file remained in passive monitoring, no direct surveillance. Riley got a job at a small computer services company, starting part-time university in Coventry. He largely vanished from Edgbaston social activities, deleting old social media accounts and cutting ties with former friends. In the following years, police received no new information related to Emma Walker. Other missing persons reports continually opened, replacing priorities. In 2016, the evidence storage system was upgraded. Emma's mud, fabric, and backpack samples transferred to cold storage at Aston Unit C, still sealed. New DNA technology was being tested, but not widely applied, so Emma's case wasn't on the review list. In 2017, Mark Pennington retired early. In an internal interview, he briefly mentioned some cases can't be closed, just not the time to revisit yet. But after the interview, Emma Walker's name no longer appeared in any official documents. Time passed. Residents around Edgbaston Reservoir occasionally mentioned the 2012 disappearance, but only as a faded memory. The trail to the reservoir reopened. Old warning signs faded, the wooden bridge once cordoned replaced. The quiet neighborhood returned to normal. No more police vehicles or nightlights. From 2018 to 2019, the Emma Walker case existed only as a database entry, unaccessed. During periodic inventories, officers opened boxes to check seal integrity, then signed intact. Other files thickened around it, recording new names, new disappearances. The old file remained deep in shelf row H14, unchanged, marking nearly 8 years since the young girl vanished from her home without a word. In early 2020, after the UK Home Office approved a new budget package for programs reviewing backlogged cases, the West Midlands Police established the Cold Case Review Unit, headquartered in the former Birmingham Command Centre. The unit's objective was to re-examine unsolved missing persons and homicide cases, prioritizing those with physical evidence still preserved in conditions suitable for modern DNA analysis. Among the more than 300 files pulled for review, Operation Reservoir was in the final batch, marked Unsolved Missing Person, High-Risk Juvenile. Detective Sergeant Sarah Nolan, 34, was appointed lead for the initial review phase. She had spent 10 years in major investigation teams, experienced with old case files and retrieving archived data. In the allocation round, Nolan selected 3 cases, including the disappearance of Emma Walker, because the evidence was fully intact and showed potential for retesting. When she visited the Aston Unit Evidence Store, rows of towering dust-covered metal shelves held hundreds of boxed cases, each labeled with incident codes and years. The Operation Reservoir box remained sealed, reference MPR 2012-1846, containing samples of mud, a gray fabric fragment, a woman's watch, and the original evidence log. Nolan opened the detailed inventory, E1912, gray fabric piece, E2112, woman's watch, stored in sealed bags, maintained at 4 degrees Celsius. These 2 items had never been reanalyzed since being sent to forensics in 2012, because technology to extract DNA from non-porous materials was not yet mature. She checked the examination log and found a note from the original analyst, Mark Pennington: retain E1912 and E2112 for further analysis if new technology becomes available. Nolan closed the file and wrote in her notebook, "Suitable for retesting, forward to Aston University DNA lab." That same week, she submitted a formal request for the lab to analyze the items using the newly implemented DNA resequencing protocol. Technicians confirmed they could extract DNA sequences even from tiny samples, with a success rate far higher than older methods. Alongside re-examining the physical evidence, Nolan reviewed the entire original investigation report, crime scene diagrams, route maps, and the interview transcript with Riley Gall. She saw the case had been thoroughly investigated at the time, but lacked scientific data to establish criminal probability. All evidence then had remained circumstantial: no DNA, no body, no direct witnesses. Reanalyzing the items was the only chance to test the original hypothesis. After completing the inventory form, Nolan contacted the evidence custody section and created a transfer sheet. The 2 sealed bags containing the fabric fragment and watch were removed from storage under her supervision and that of a technician. Before transport, she checked the storage temperature and signed confirmation that the seals were intact. Simultaneously, she requested the data center retrieve all 2012 digital crime scene photographs to cross-reference the fabric find spot with other locations around the reservoir. The map clearly showed that area lay near the northern fence line, adjacent to the Moseley residential area. That detail prompted a private note: location relevant to potential suspect travel route. By mid-January, all transfer paperwork was complete. The 2 items left storage and were delivered to Aston University's DNA lab to begin testing. In her report to superiors, Nolan wrote, "Operation Reservoir. Cold case review initiated. Objective: reanalyze samples E1912 and E2112, confirm presence of human DNA, assess link between evidence and victim." Before leaving the office, she looked at the rows of metal shelves where hundreds of cases still lay silent, then closed her notebook. The last line she wrote that day read, "10 years have passed, but the file is still here. Time doesn't erase evidence. It only makes it wait for someone to find it again." In February 2021, when the DNA results from Aston University arrived, Sarah Nolan was at the Cold Case Review Unit office to receive the report in person. The 12-page document was headed Confidential Forensic DNA Analysis Report. The findings confirmed that Exhibit E1912, the gray fabric fragment recovered in 2012, contained human blood, and the DNA profile matched exactly the reference sample from Emma Walker's medical records, with an error probability of less than 1 in 10 million. The woman's watch, E2112, yielded no clear result, but the leather strap carried trace skin cells from the same source, reinforcing reliability. Nolan read the final conclusion over and over. Presence of victim's DNA confirms contact after physical injury. That simple sentence was enough to break 8 years of silence in the case. She immediately cross-checked the original evidence log for collection location. Collected at 54 Church Lane, Moseley, property of suspect's grandfather. That note made her pause for a long time. Riley Gall's grandfather's house had never been thoroughly searched during the original investigation because there had been no legal grounds for a warrant. Yet 2 of the most critical exhibits had been found in the back garden of the very place Riley had lived. Nolan overlaid the old crime scene map and confirmed the coordinates were just over 2 miles from where the bicycle was discovered, entirely consistent with a feasible suspect route. She called an urgent meeting with unit leadership to present the results. After reviewing all documentation, Command authorized formal reopening under the new code name Operation Reservoir Thick. The decision was signed on February 15, 2021, changing Emma Walker's missing person status to suspected homicide. That same day, Nolan assembled the new investigation team, 2 serious crime detectives, one forensic specialist, one data analyst, and a Crown Prosecution Service liaison. She personally oversaw re-examination of all remaining evidence, including the bicycle, backpack, fabric fragment, and watch. DNA extracts were duplicated and uploaded to the national database for comparison against every biometric record in the West Midlands region. Meanwhile, admin staff contacted the Moseley Residency Office to verify ownership of 54 Church Lane in 2012. Records confirmed it belonged to Riley Gall's grandfather and that Riley had lived there throughout his 2 years of secondary school. Combined with the DNA results, this formally elevated Riley Gall to primary suspect. Nolan pulled every archived record on him, statements, timelines, registered vehicles, and 2012 interview notes. Every minor detail was re-entered into the digital case map. On screen, red markers clearly showed the Walker home, the Reservoir Bank, the gas station, and finally the Moseley house where the victim's DNA had appeared. All the old travel routes now connected in a closed loop. Nolan printed the map and submitted it to command with a summary report. Emma Walker's DNA detected on evidence recovered from Riley Gall relatives' property. Random match probability, effectively 0. Recommend full criminal investigation, primary suspect Riley Gall. Approval was signed that afternoon. Nolan circulated an internal alert to the entire Birmingham CID that Operation Reservoir Sec was active and requested the latest administrative data on Riley. Current address, employment, and relationships. When the system confirmed he now lived in Solihull, she underlined in large letters in her notebook. Subject location confirmed. 10 years after the disappearance, Emma Walker's case was officially reopened, this time not as a missing person inquiry, but as a full homicide investigation. In the small cold case review unit office, Nolan closed the old file, placed the freshly printed new order on top, clearly marked, reopened. Active investigation. On her desk, the expanded Birmingham map glowed with dozens of red pins under the lamplight, all pointing to the same address, the back garden of the Moseley house, where two pieces of evidence, silent for nearly a decade, had just given them their voice back. Once the case was reopened as Operation Reservoir Sec, Sarah Nolan's first step was to re-examine every piece of technical data that had been overlooked or was technologically unfeasible in 2012. She worked with the West Midlands Police Digital Forensics Unit to request recovery of Riley Gall's 2012 Vodafone mobile records, including call logs, text messages, and cell tower location data for the number he used while living in Moseley. Technicians took nearly 2 weeks to restore the archived national backups that had never been fully decoded at the time. When the report reached Nolan's desk, spreadsheets showed hundreds of connections between Riley's phone and towers around Moseley on the night of November 20, 2012. Between 9 p.m. and midnight, his device repeatedly registered in the Church Lane area, only a few hundred yards from where the DNA evidence was later recovered. This directly contradicted his original statement that he had stayed home all evening. Nolan requested detailed coordinate exports and overlaid them on the crime scene map. The result traced a short route from his grandfather's house to near the trailhead leading down to the reservoir, then back again, within just over an hour, almost perfectly matching the route reconstructed years earlier by analyst Pennington. Nolan noted in the report, confirmed device presence in target zone during critical window. Beyond location data, the team recovered several deleted text messages thanks to the network's automatic backups. 2 messages sent to Emma's number days before her disappearance were threatening and controlling. "If you don't answer, I'll come to your house, and don't try avoiding me, you know I can find you anytime." Both were sent from the exact phone Riley had admitted using. Time and location stamps placed them in Moseley, less than 3 miles from Emma's home. Reviewing the old files, Nolan realized these messages had never appeared in the original report, likely because direct carrier access had not been authorized at the time. Discovering them nearly 9 years later solidified a clear link between Riley and Emma in the immediate lead-up to her disappearance. Nolan immediately forwarded the report to the internal Crown prosecution team with a timeline, location, and behavioral summary. She also tasked the social media analysis team with recovering Riley's deleted 2013 accounts. With court orders and national technical support, investigators accessed archived messages where Riley had written to one of Emma's close friends. "If she won't talk to me again, I'll do something that forces her to notice." That message was sent just 2 days before Emma vanished. Every exchange was printed and added to the suspect file. Nolan read each line, then signed the request to place Riley Gall under formal surveillance as suspect under renewed criminal inquiry. The submission to command stated, "New technical evidence proves suspect presence at scene during victim disappearance window, plus direct threat messages. Recommend covert surveillance to gather current behavior and potential links to original evidence." That weekend, the Birmingham magistrates approved a 4-week surveillance warrant covering phone, vehicle, and movements. As soon as the order reached the Cold Case Review Unit, Sarah Nolan convened the technical and field teams to execute the covert surveillance plan under Operation Reservoir the Sex. From that moment, Riley Gall became the active surveillance target for 4 consecutive weeks, coordinated tightly between digital monitoring and field detectives. A GPS tracker was discreetly attached beneath his silver hatchback while it was parked at his Solihull workplace. His phone was added to real-time signal monitoring. 2 detectives rotated daily shifts, tailing him and filming from a safe distance. The first days showed routine behavior, office in the morning, back to his rented flat on Stratford Road in the evening, supermarket, or gym on weekends. But in the second week, movement patterns turned unusual. Roughly 3 evenings a week after work, Riley drove from Solihull toward central Birmingham, circled Edgbaston Reservoir, slowed along the water, and sometimes stopped for a few minutes at the north side parking area, the exact spot where Emma's bicycle had been found. All visits occurred at night, usually 9 to 10:30 p.m., when the area was deserted. Surveillance cameras captured him sitting in the car, phone light illuminating his face, occasionally looking down as if reading or typing, then switching off and driving away. Nolan received daily reports, built route spreadsheets, and saw a clear repeating pattern: Solihull departure, Edgbaston Reservoir, stop, Moseley Loop, home. GPS and cell tower data confirmed he passed through every key location from the original case. Nolan wrote in her log, "Subject revisits multiple prior crime locations, potential psychological link." By mid-3rd week, surveillance noted longer stops. Video showed Riley exit the car, stand at the fence, staring at the water, for nearly 10 minutes, hands in pockets, no calls, no interaction. When another vehicle passed, he quickly returned to his car and left. Analysts classified the behavior as classic reconnection with scene, common in offenders with emotional ties to a location. Nolan updated the CPS and requested extended monitoring to capture any verbal admissions, as current evidence remained behavioral only. That weekend, technicians added an environmental microphone to the vehicle for possible self-talk, and a 3rd undercover detective began tailing by personal car. Simultaneously, Nolan reviewed Riley's known contacts for potential natural access informants in preparation for voluntary statement collection. Internal reports noted that during the 4 weeks, Riley contacted no one from his old circle and showed no data wiping or digital behavior changes. However, in the final week, he made 2 unusually long calls, each over 10 minutes, from his parked car in Moseley. Audio was muffled, but he was heard mentioning the old thing, and they'll never know. Nolan underlined those phrases in the transcript and sent it for voice stress analysis. The behavioral psychologist concluded the tone indicated controlled stress, typical of someone trying to calm themselves. GPS placed the calls precisely outside 54 Church Lane, the address where Emma's DNA had been found. The coincidence led Nolan to request a 7-day surveillance extension and begin planning direct approach options. The plan was detailed. Any mention of case specifics by Riley under any circumstances would be recorded as grounds for a search warrant. On the last official surveillance day, as Nolan reviewed the full movement log, the data points formed a closed loop linking Solihull, Moseley, and Edgbaston Reservoir, the route Riley Gall still quietly drove each night, 10 years after Emma Walker vanished, unnoticed by anyone else in the city. When the surveillance phase ended with a string of unusually matching behavioral patterns, Sarah Nolan decided to move to the next step, collecting indirect verbal evidence. Based on old records, she discovered that Riley had a close high school friend named Dean Cooper, who had played on the same King Edward VI school soccer team. Dean left Birmingham in 2014 and had recently returned to the city, now working at an engineering company in Harburn. Nolan contacted him through the local office, explaining the purpose of the cooperation and assuring him that his identity would be kept completely confidential. After an initial meeting, Dean agreed to help once he learned that Emma's disappearance case had been reopened, and Riley was the prime suspect. He said he still maintained loose contact with Riley online, occasionally exchanging casual messages. Nolan and the investigation team planned a controlled meeting, a monitored encounter, with the goal of sparking a natural conversation through which Riley might inadvertently reveal information. The meeting was set to take place away from the cold case unit office. They chose the White Swan pub in Harburn, a busy residential area easy to blend equipment into. Dean was equipped with a small recording device hidden in his jacket button, with a 3-meter audio range and a secure transmission feed, so the monitoring team outside could receive the signal live. A second surveillance team sat in a van nearby, monitoring via long-range camera and remote filming through the pub windows. On Friday evening, Dean texted Riley with a simple message, "I'm in Harburn this week, want to grab a drink?" Riley replied after a few minutes and agreed to meet. At 7 p.m. Dean arrived first, choosing a secluded table near the window behind a curtain. Nolan and 2 other investigators sat in a parked van 2 streets away, watching the audio feed displayed on a laptop screen. Around 7:30 p.m., Riley appeared, wearing a black jacket, walking hurriedly, eyes scanning around before entering. When he saw Dean, he forced a smile and sat down. The initial conversation revolved around work, life in Solihull, and old acquaintances. Dean spoke naturally, recalling some school and soccer team memories, then slowly steered the topic toward 2012. He mentioned that disappearance, asking if Riley had ever seen Emma after the breakup. A brief silence followed, only the sound of glasses clinking on the table. Riley smiled faintly and said he had nothing to do with it, his voice slightly uneasy. Dean didn't press, just nodded, then continued by saying some old friends still thought Riley knew more than he had ever told. Riley sat still, eyes down on the table, fingers turning his beer glass. He said quietly, almost whispering, "People should just forget it. The more you dig, the worse it gets. What's buried should stay buried." The statement made Nolan in the van grip her pen tightly. Dean pretended to laugh and asked, "What do you mean by buried?" Riley didn't answer right away, just shrugged. "It's just a figure of speech. I don't want to talk about it anymore." A little later, when Dean mentioned how the Edgbaston area had changed, Riley went quiet, then said, "I still drive through there sometimes. It's like that place never lets me go." The remark was clearly captured by the microphone, along with the sound of his beer glass hitting the table. When Dean asked why he went back, Riley replied vaguely, "Just to make sure no one finds anything." Nolan, listening to the recording in real time, signaled the tech team to mark the timestamp. The signal transmitted steadily, and the entire content was saved simultaneously to the surveillance team's secure hard drive. After nearly an hour, the conversation ended. Riley left the pub first, and Dean stayed a few more minutes to avoid suspicion. Once the microphone signal cut off, Nolan ordered the support team to retrieve the device and transfer the data to the analysis room. The 67-minute recording was backed up and transcribed into a formal report. The phrases, "What's buried," and "No one finds anything" were quoted verbatim, marked with specific timestamps. The next morning, Nolan and the legal advisor reviewed the entire recording and agreed it was strong enough grounds to request a search warrant for related properties, especially the house at 54 Church Lane, where Emma's DNA had previously been found. In the report submitted to the commander, she wrote clearly, "Controlled meeting successful, subject admitted indirect reference to concealment, requesting search warrant approval." As she left the office, Nolan stood looking out the window at the morning light falling on the gray buildings. A seemingly ordinary conversation in a small pub had revealed what no one had been able to force Riley Gall to admit for 10 years, that something was truly hidden, and he still returned to that place to ensure it would never be found. Immediately after the pub meeting recording was analyzed and cross-referenced, Sarah Nolan finalized the application for a search warrant and submitted it to Birmingham Crown Court. The warrant was approved on Wednesday morning, allowing the investigation agency to conduct a full search of the entire premises at 54 Church Lane, Moseley, the home where Riley Gall's grandfather still lived. On the morning of execution, the quiet neighborhood was partially cordoned off, with forensic vans and CID units parked along both sides of the street. Nolan personally directed the operation, entering the house at 8 a.m. with a 6-person forensic team. Riley's grandfather, now in his 80s, cooperated and confirmed that Riley had lived there until 2013 before moving to Solihull, and the old bedroom had been left untouched. The forensic team began searching from inside out, documenting the current state and taking surface samples from the bedroom, wardrobe, and under the bed. Finding nothing unusual indoors, the team moved to the backyard, where old records noted a piece of fabric had been recovered in 2012. The soil there had been landscaped and re-turfed, but a metal detector gave a faint signal near the western brick wall corner. 2 specialists carefully scraped away the damp topsoil, and at about 30 centimeters deep, the edge of a black nylon bag covered in mud emerged. The bag was carefully extracted, surface mud rinsed off, sealed and labeled as new evidence. E0721. Upon opening for inspection, it contained an old Nokia phone and a broken silver necklace with a heart pendant engraved, EW. Both items were wet and covered in faint rust, indicating they had been buried for years. Nolan observed silently, only taking notes. The devices were handed to electronic specialists for data recovery. Under the mobile lab's lights, they removed the battery, dried the circuit board, and connected it to a reader. After more than 30 minutes, the screen displayed a series of saved messages, the last one sent from Emma's number to Riley's, time-stamped 22:19 on the night of November 20, 2012. The content was just 2 words: "Please stop." The forensics team extracted all remaining data, including call logs and contacts. Everything was saved to a secure hard drive with parallel backup. While the tech team worked, forensics continued excavating around the nylon bag location. About a meter away, an officer's trowel struck something hard in the mud. After cleaning, they identified it as a small bone fragment resembling a human wrist bone. The area was immediately expanded by 2 square meters and cordoned off with tape. The bone sample was placed in a sterile bag, sealed, and sent to the DNA lab. The team fell silent. Only the sound of the generator and rain pattering on the tarpaulin. Nolan walked around the garden, her gaze stopping on an uneven patch of young grass, a 2-meter-long strip running along the fence. She ordered a ground-penetrating radar scan of the subsurface. The screen showed an irregular structure, inconsistent with the surrounding soil. The order to dig was given. After nearly an hour, the forensic team uncovered several more scattered bone fragments, along with a few pieces of decayed pale blue fabric. Everything was meticulously collected and numbered from E0821 to E1621. Once everything was loaded into the forensic van, Nolan stood looking down at the excavated pit, the torn-up lawn, black water pooling. That same evening, the Aston University DNA lab confirmed urgent results. The genetic sequence from the bone fragment matched Emma Walker's medical records exactly, with an error probability of less than 1 in 10 million. The report was printed that night and sent directly to Nolan's desk. She read it under the dim desk lamp, her finger pausing on the conclusion line, match confirmed. Sample origin, human female. Emma Walker. It had been 9 years since the girl vanished. All unit personnel were called back that night to prepare confirmation files. At 11 p.m., Nolan signed the report, formally announcing the results to West Midlands Police leadership. Human remains positively identified as Emma Walker. Case upgraded to confirmed homicide. In the back office, technicians continued recovering images from the phone. Beyond the final message, data showed an unanswered call from Riley's number on the same night of the disappearance, just minutes after the text was sent. All information was entered into the electronic evidence system with specific timestamps. The house at 54 Church Lane was sealed for 72 hours for additional excavation, and the remaining remains were collected and transferred to the examination center. As Nolan left the garden, dawn was breaking, mist covering the path, police lights shining through the trees. After nearly a decade, Emma's traces had finally been found, buried deep beneath the silent soil behind the house of the man who had once been her boyfriend. Immediately after the DNA identification results were confirmed and reported to police leadership, Sarah Nolan submitted the arrest plan for Riley Gall to the prosecution office. The arrest warrant was approved by Birmingham Court on May 4, 2021, on 2 grounds. DNA evidence locating the victim's body on land, used by the Gall family, and electronic data confirming direct contact between Riley and Emma on the night she disappeared. Early the next morning, the CID task force coordinated with Solihull Police to execute the warrant. When the police car stopped in front of the building where Riley rented his apartment, the neighborhood air was still damp with mist. He was restrained on the spot as he stepped into the parking lot. The arrest proceeded quietly, with no resistance. Officers read him his rights and sealed his personal phone and car keys. The tech team entered the apartment and conducted an emergency search under the accompanying warrant. In the living room, they seized a laptop, portable hard drive, and 2 old phones. All were packaged in anti-static bags, numbered as evidence, and transferred to the digital analysis lab. When brought to West Midlands Police Headquarters, Riley appeared calm, requested a glass of water, and said he would cooperate. Nolan personally conducted the interrogation with 2 investigators present. She began by confirming identity, presenting the grounds for arrest, and listing the collected evidence. When asked about the Mosley house, Riley said he hadn't lived there for nearly 10 years and knew nothing about what was found in the garden. Nolan showed photos of the nylon bag, Nokia phone, and silver necklace. Riley's eyes lingered for a few seconds before turning to the wall, his voice low. "I didn't bury anything. I didn't kill her." She didn't respond, just placed the crime scene photos next. When he saw the printed "Please stop" message, he fell silent, hands clenched. Nolan shifted questions, mentioning the pub recording where Riley spoke of what's buried. He sighed and repeated, "I only meant it figuratively. People misunderstood." The interrogation lasted over 2 hours. Riley maintained that on the night Emma disappeared, he was at his grandfather's house and never left the area. When Nolan presented phone data confirming his device was active in the Edgbaston area from 9 to 11 p.m., Riley replied that someone might have borrowed the phone. The explanation made the room atmosphere heavy. Detectives continued pressing on details of his relationship with Emma and threatening messages recovered from the carrier. Riley admitted sending them, but said they were just youthful arguments. When asked why he frequently visited Edgbaston Reservoir in recent years, he was silent for a long time, then said, "I just needed to make sure no one remembered anymore." Every response was recorded and transcribed on the spot. While the interrogation proceeded, the digital team analyzed data from the seized computer and phones. They discovered multiple offline saved Google Earth satellite images on the hard drive, mostly of the Edgbaston and Mosley areas, including coordinates of 54 Church Lane. The data was dated 2018 and 2019, years after Riley had left Birmingham. The analysis report was sent directly to the interrogation room. When Nolan showed him printouts of the satellite images, Riley looked down at the table, shoulders tense, but gave no reaction. He said briefly, "I just liked looking back at the place, nothing strange. Nolan noted in her book, subject shows avoidance response, emotional suppression. After more than 3 hours, the interrogation ended, and Riley was taken to holding. The prosecution officially issued charges on 2 counts, manslaughter and obstruction of justice. Physical, digital, and testimonial evidence was listed as 27 items in the charging file. The Solihull apartment was sealed for extended search, yielding additional personal documents, phone bills, and bank cards. As Nolan left headquarters after the shift, she passed the evidence storage room, where Emma's Nokia phone sat in a glass case beside the rusted silver necklace. She paused for a few seconds, looking through the reflective glass, then continued walking. That evening, Birmingham media ran a short report. West Midlands police arrest 26-year-old man in Solihull in connection with 2012 disappearance of teenager Emma Walker. On the drive back to the office, Nolan looked through the car window at city lights faintly reflecting on the wet road. And in her heart she knew that after nearly a decade, every trace had led to the same name. The trial of Riley Gall took place at Birmingham Crown Court in early November 2021, 9 years after Emma Walker's disappearance. The large third-floor courtroom was under tight security, with all files and evidence transferred from storage in sealed containers. The lead prosecutor, representing West Midlands Police, opened with a charging document over 20 pages long, detailing the reinvestigation process, forensic, digital, and testimonial evidence obtained during Operation Reservoir. The entire sequence of events was reconstructed from the moment Emma vanished, the discovery of her bicycle and backpack, to the finding of her body, buried in the garden of Riley's grandfather's house. Forensic experts were called first to testify. The DNA report confirmed that blood on the fabric fragment and recovered bones matched the victim's medical records exactly, ruling out error. Next, the digital team presented data extracted from Riley's phone and computer, showing his device location in Moseley on the night Emma disappeared, along with threatening messages sent to the victim days earlier. They projected GPS maps on screen, red dots connecting the route between Riley's grandfather's house and Edgbaston Reservoir shore. The prosecution also entered the White Swan pub recording, where Riley said, "What's buried should stay buried," treating it as indirect evidence of intent to conceal. Additionally, the final text message, "Please stop," was read aloud in court, causing the room to fall silent. The prosecutor asserted that Riley had deliberately staged the disappearance, hidden the body to avoid prosecution, and for 9 years continued returning to the scene to check if anyone had discovered it. Testimony from investigators, including Sarah Nolan, described retracing every clue and the absolute match between scene data and the defendant's behavior during surveillance. When asked, Nolan said succinctly, "All evidence leads to the same point: the garden where the victim was found." The defense did not challenge the DNA results or digital data, but focused on motive. Riley's lawyer argued Emma's death was an accident during an altercation, that Riley panicked, acted without control, and had no intent to kill. However, the prosecution countered that burying the body, deleting data, and monitoring the area for years proved intent to cover up a crime, not a spontaneous reaction. They cited the saved satellite images on Riley's computer of the exact burial area, showing the defendant actively monitored the scene. In rebuttal, the defense attorney asked the court to consider manslaughter rather than murder, based on Riley's cooperation upon arrest and admission to concealing the body. The trial lasted 10 days, with over 30 witnesses, including former classmates, neighbors, and a gas station employee, who saw Riley washing his car on the night of the disappearance. Each testimony was presented with illustrative images, the entire timeline from 2012 to 2021, recreated via electronic diagrams. The prosecution concluded that forensic evidence, digital data, and testimony showed Riley intentionally lured Emma from her home, inflicted injuries causing death, then disposed of the body and attempted to erase all traces. Under the weight of evidence, on the morning of the 10th day, Riley changed his plea, admitting Emma's death resulted from a thoughtless act, but denying intent to murder. He said in his self-defense statement, that he had panicked and didn't know what to do. The judge accepted the guilty plea on 2 counts, manslaughter and obstruction of justice, while dismissing the murder charge. In sentencing, the judge emphasized Riley's actions after causing the death, burying, concealing, and remaining silent for nearly 10 years, as a cold, deliberate series of actions that caused profound harm to the victim's family. Based on severity and duration of concealment, the court sentenced Riley Gall to 25 years imprisonment, eligible for parole review after serving at least 18 years. When the sentence was read, the courtroom fell silent. Riley bowed his head and said nothing. Sarah Nolan sat in the investigator's row, looking down at the file in her hand, its cover page reading, "Case Closed Recommendation." After nearly a decade, the scattered pieces of evidence had finally connected into a complete chain, closing the disappearance case once forgotten under the name Operation Reservoir. After the verdict was pronounced at Birmingham Crown Court, the entire investigation team from the Cold Case Review Unit began the final phase of the operation. Sarah Nolan was assigned the task of compiling the summary file and completing the administrative paperwork to officially close Operation Reservoir 2. In the quiet office of the West Midlands Police Headquarters, she and the remaining investigators sat around the old wooden table, spreading out stacks of files, transcripts, and crime scene photos, counting each piece of evidence and cross-checking it against the electronic inventory. Every timeline milestone over the 9 years was meticulously documented, from the initial missing person report to the sentencing hearing, accompanied by detailed notes on forensic procedures, technical surveillance, and data recovery. Nolan wrote in the introduction of the report, "The case Operation Reservoir, opened in 2012, was reopened in February 2021 under the code Operation Reservoir the Sex. The expanded investigation recovered physical and digital evidence, determined that victim Emma Walker died as a result of criminal acts, confirmed the identity of suspect Riley Gall, and led to a successful prosecution. On November 25, 2021, the sentence took effect, and the operation was closed. On the computer screen, the final report exceeded 200 pages, divided into 17 sections, each describing a specific phase: scene collection, DNA analysis, surveillance, re-interviews, and conclusions. Notes from the forensics team were photocopied, and drone images of the area around Moseley and Edgbaston Reservoir were attached in the appendix. The police legal department confirmed that all documents had been verified for legality and were eligible for permanent storage in the cold case archives. Nolan printed the final version, signed the cover page with the bold text, "Final Report, Operation Reservoir the Sex, Closed, 2021. An electronic copy was saved to the central system, while the original was bound into a volume over 300 pages thick, black cover, sealed with a security label, and placed in a metal filing box. The case number MPR 2012-1846 was retained, with only the suffix "tie" added to mark the reinvestigation process. Inside the box, the remaining physical evidence, the Nokia phone, silver necklace, gray fabric fragment, and sealed soil sample from the backyard, was enclosed in anti-moisture bags, accompanied by a detailed inventory of recovery dates. On the final afternoon before transferring the file to storage, Nolan spent several hours reviewing all the electronic data, ensuring every copy was identical. When finished, she printed the final concluding line of the report: Operation Reservoir the Sex was closed on November 30, 2021. The investigation spanned 9 years, consisting of 2 operational phases, involving a total of 57 personnel, 412 items of evidence analyzed, and 86 witnesses interviewed. Conclusion: the case is resolved. The perpetrator held criminally accountable, victim identified. She closed the file, placed it in the box, and together with 2 colleagues carried it down to the basement storage. The heavy metal door opened, releasing a chill from the rows of shelves. In the silent space, hundreds of file boxes lined the walls on both sides, numbered by year and operation. Nolan bent down, placed the box in its new position, the label, MPR 2012-1846 TOW, sitting right next to the original 2012 file. As she locked the vault door, she paused for a few seconds, looking through the small glass window, the fluorescent light reflecting off the cold steel surface. She entered in the storage log, Operation Reservoir Thakun file handed over to West Midlands Cold Case Archives, storage completed. Afterward, she returned to the office, where the whiteboard still bore the handwritten words from earlier in the year: reopen, review, resolve. Nolan erased the last line, leaving the two words case closed. Outside, Birmingham had entered winter, with fog enveloping the old streets around the police station. Downstairs, technicians were packing up equipment, removing the maps pinned with red markers. A young detective quietly asked, "Do you feel like it's really over?" Nolan gave a tired smile. "Ending doesn't mean forgetting. We're just putting it back where it belongs." She looked at the photo of Emma Walker pinned on the wall, a picture of the girl in her school uniform, bright face, eyes still clear and innocent. As night fell, when the building sank into silence, the last office light went out, leaving the file storage in the basement, where the documents titled Operation Reservoir Thakun would lie quietly among the other boxes, like a full stop to the 9-year investigation that began on a November night in 2012 and ended in the winter of 2021, when justice was finally recorded. The story above is not only a 9-year investigation journey in Birmingham, but also a profound reflection of the social issues that British people are still facing, particularly violence in teenage relationships and the community's silence in the face of warning signs. The details of Riley Gall controlling Emma Walker through messages, stalking her, and gradually isolating her from friends illustrate how psychological violence can begin very subtly. In the context of modern Britain, where relationships are maintained through social media and technology, recognizing controlling, threatening, or privacy-invading behavior has become even more critical. Many UK government campaigns such as It's Not Okay or Ask for Angela have been launched to encourage victims to speak up and seek help, something that tragically Emma in the story was unable to do. The perseverance of Detective Sarah Nolan and the case being solved, thanks to new DNA technology, serve as evidence of British society's faith in justice and forensic science. A system in which, no matter how long it takes, the truth is ultimately uncovered. From this story, readers can draw two important lessons. First, never downplay signs of emotional abuse. Share them and seek help from family, school, or social organizations. Second, technology truly protects people only when used correctly. As in the case, phone data and DNA helped give voice to the deceased. In a modern Britain that can sometimes still be isolated and silent, Emma's lesson reminds us that caring, timely intervention, and believing in the power of truth are what can save a life. Thank you for following to the end of the story, the long 9-year journey for justice to finally be served. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring cases that seem long dormant, but still whisper in the darkness.